is functioning today, and role is to monitor crisis areas and building confidence and treaty monitoring. So I like to see other regions emulated to suit their own regions, but not necessarily copy, but to suit their region. And last year I gave a presentation in Dubai, and it was accepted, received quite well. And even in the UN 4 years back, I gave a presentation and argued that why don't we set up such an agency. And there were Israelis and there were Arabs in that meeting room. And instead of me being picked up and thrown out of the window, they actually said, hey, this is a great idea. And asked actually UN, why don't we have a specialized meeting to look at this concept? But of course, UN in its wisdom has not made a move. And such are the environment that we work in. Trouble is that by that time you are either really too old to think or you're dead anyway. So before that happens, I like to see this thing established. So here we are, made a suggestion that there should be a Middle Eastern satellite center. Yes, madam.
We are told that the Iranian nuclear development is underground. Can their systems...
I wish I can show you all the images that I have. You can actually see, not underground. What you can do is, because now you've got a better temporal resolution, you've got many more satellites visiting frequently the Earth, a particular spot. You can actually go back in time and start to see how things... In fact, I've got about 6 images over Iran's enrichment facility at Natanz, right from the time when the hole was dug and the building was being built, until the building completed and the roof put over. Now, if you've got a hole with buildings in it being covered up and then surrounded by 4 perimeter fences and the anti-aircraft guns and the anti-missile systems around it, it's not a civilian facility, obviously. It's something highly sensitive stuff. Now, I can understand why Iranian would like to do that, because it's been bombed already once by the Iraqis and damaged their power reactor. And they live under constant threat from Israel. So they need to protect, but including if it's civilian. You see, the trouble is that it's all in the mind. When do you decide to become nuclear? Until you have declared yourself a nuclear state, or decide that, yeah, I'm going to go nuclear. You don't know what the intentions are. So people tend to preempt, like Israelis done in Iraq, like Israelis done in Syria. They bomb the reactors to hell. That's the way we don't want to do with Iran. Thank God for that. I am hoping that nothing will happen like that, because Iraq and Iran are 2 different kettle of fish. If you bomb Iran, I think we will have an enormous price to pay, much greater price than we are paying now by attacking Iraq. So, but we can tell. Now, as a result, if you follow the IAEA and the US, they've said actually that yes, Iran has acquiring capabilities, but they are nowhere near weaponizing it. The enrichment facility that you are referring to underground, as long as IAEA can monitor it, and which they are doing that, and if they are not enriching that uranium to beyond 3%, they are not actually building it as a weapon. And fortunately, IAEA is still monitoring it. Now, unless they build something else clandestinely, Iran is a big country. Now, this is where space can come in, that it can start to monitor elsewhere. I'm just arguing here that in the Middle East, the situation is ripe, in fact. There is a space capabilities. The Israelis are launching satellites with 0.5 meter resolution now. It's as good as US and Indians and Europe. Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries are able to purchase imageries, and they are able to process them and interpret them. So they are capable of monitoring also. So I'm arguing that if there is a developed cooperation in the area, which apparently it seems to be doing, we can now try and think about seriously establishing a Middle Eastern satellite center. Now, let me very quickly, as a CBM, a confidence building measure, I'll take a quick example of peacekeeping operation of the United Nations in the Golan Heights. Here is the Israeli side, and here is Syria. In the middle, this orange line is the UN ceasefire line. And the United Nations is monitoring from here, looking that way and looking that way with the binoculars. But then I've argued the binoculars has a limit to how far you can see. So why not get a satellite image like that one? Because that looks deep into Israel, where actually all the weaponries are concentrated. Similarly, on the Syrian side, then you have a better chance of at least seeing what's going on. Now, what can they see if they start to use satellite imagery? Let's take an example. Here is the Golan Height on the Israeli side, and if I look at one of those things, here is a tank exercise area. These tracks are made by tanks. These are buildings which are housing either the barracks or the tanks themselves. You can actually see these are the bunkers, hardened shelters for tanks. You can measure the size of these bunkers, you know the size of a tank. You can say how many tanks can go into one bunker, and you can estimate the size of tanks, number of tanks. So from doing this kind of tricks, do a bit of lateral thinking, you can actually estimate the force size, which I have done in the case of Europe in many cases, and in here as well. This is a very large storage thing. Here is an ammunition storage site. Here are lots of hardened bunkers. These are either the barracks or the shelters for tanks and so on. This is a huge complex on the Israeli side. Let's go on the other side of the UN border into Syria. There is a military air base here. There are lots of aircraft you can see, and if you zoom down onto one particular area, here are the things. You can see a helicopter there, you can see another one here, and these are bunkers actually. You can see the entrance of hardened shelters for storing aircraft, because the Middle East paid a price in the first Middle East war. The Israelis actually bombed, wiped out Egyptian Air Force completely, because they were all sitting on the tarmac. So since then they've learned. So these are the kind of things they do. And if you look at the other side, this is a typical of a huge missile deployment area in Syria. These are these, on the periphery you can see dots here. These are the missile silos. But the interesting thing also is in the center here. And if you blow that up, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see the missiles. These are the surface-to-air missile defense mechanism. And it's a typical signature. If you look at the Soviet Union missile SAM sites, you look at Pakistan, you look at India, you can look at the US. So thank goodness for military. They have a good, clear thinking. They think all alike. So here we go. In conclusion, I want to say that commercial satellite imageries are available for the buying. Why not governments use that? And then build confidence in each other. Establish regional satellite verification agencies like the European ones. And then we can have a monitor to Golan Heights and whatever. And particularly in the Middle East, I think it's extremely important. By the way, lack of time, you can actually use satellite imageries for monitoring refugee movements and estimating the number of refugees not being used effectively yet. And I've been arguing with the UNHCR, but UN, like any bureaucratic establishment, takes a long time to convince. However, so in conclusion, use satellite imageries for specialized agency, convince them, like the OPCW, the equivalent of Chemical Weapons Convention. It's an equivalent to IAEA. This is established in The Hague. It's a Chemical Weapons Verification Agency. CTBTO, UNHCR must start to use satellite imagery. And then let's have few more regional things: Middle East, South Asia, Latin America, for example, Africa. Well, if I haven't whetted your appetite, I haven't done my job properly. Many thanks. This pen was given to me by Russians, and they said, I'm going to give you your laser weapon. There it is.